over 1,000 startups, more than 500 incubators, and hundreds of investors and delegation from more than 10 different countries have assembled for a 3-day mega startup event called Startup Mahakumbh in the national capital today. Being organized at the Bharat Mandapam, the event is witnessing participation from key global as well as Indian stakeholders, unicorn startups, global domestic venture capitalists, corporates, industry leaders are participating as we speak. Of the major headlines that have come out of the event, we're given to understand Zomato's founder and CEO Deepinder Goyal has said that the quick commerce service Blinkit, which competes with Zepto and Swiggy's Instamart, will soon be bigger than the food delivery business in a year's time. And all those startups, of course, speaking there at the Mahakumbh, the Mela of sorts that we're witnessing of startups who've gathered here in the national capital. An interesting point of view, an interesting insight into what's happening as far as the delivery, the quick service delivery app of various other, of Zomato, of course, and the various other competitors is concerned. Also, a comparison between the quick service delivery app and the food delivery. It does look like that people are ordering more other items as opposed to just ordering food.
Right, true. And, there's so many questions raised on the entire quick commerce delivery. Does it have unit economics? Does it make sense? Per delivery, are you making money as a business or not? We've seen, startups like Dunzo go through extremely difficult periods, and not being able to pay salaries and stuff. But this is a very surprising comment coming in from somebody like Deepinder Goyal, the man who's known to have built one of the first food delivery apps in the country, which is Zomato. And this conversation was happening with his major investor, Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani of InfoEdge, sitting right next to him. And Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani did reassure Deepinder Goyal that Zomato is not going out of business anytime soon. Food delivery as a business is going to be here to stay. But Mr. Deepinder Goyal had a larger point to make. He's saying that all the business models that exist today, successful business models, will become outdated in a decade's time. Zomato in itself has been in existence for 16 years, and they turned profitable just just last year. And in fact, as a stock, after it listed, it became a multi-bagger of a stock. So it's surprising that when Zomato is now riding the crest of a wave, you have Deepinder Goyal saying the fact that Blinkit. Quick commerce delivery, so many questions surrounding the profitability
of quick
commerce
delivery. The more nascent startup, basically.
Yeah, and not known to have turned in huge profits. Even now, Zomato, contributes nearly 60% of the company's profits. Blinkit overtaking Zomato, that's a surprising statement to make. But if it is he himself who's talking about it, he's talking about it in the fact that...
He's done the math.
Yeah, because he's done the math, and Shweta, he's in fact is talking about it at a stage when Blinkit is going to looking to expand into becoming a full-fledged e-commerce player,
right.
And not just your quick commerce, one or two deliveries that are taking place. You're talking about a full-fledged, more broad-based e-commerce player, and there we know there's enough and more money to be made, and in that sense, the expansion of Blinkit is what he's probably betting on, and that's the reason why he's finding this confidence to say this. In fact, he had a very interesting anecdote to share at the Startup Mahakumbh. He talked about the fact that for the first couple of years since when Zomato was at Zomato's inception, first couple of years, they were completely bootstrapped as a startup, and yet they were making profits. He said that only when Mr. Sanjeev Bikhchandani called him and decided to give him some money, that they started making losses. And then they had to work really hard to ensure that all the funding that came in, it is deployed correctly, and eventually they make a profit over all the funding. But yes, they have figured out a way to make money despite all the investments. And Sanjeev Bikhchandani was quick to point out the fact that you needed those funds because you had a competition in the form of Swiggy, which is backed by a huge investor like Process. So it was natural that Zomato needed the funding to eventually fight to take on Swiggy, and eventually they made money. But then again, things are changing and moving and evolving so fast that Mr. Deepinder Goyal is looking at a future where quick commerce delivery will eventually, will outstrip food delivery business as a business.
All right, and not just that, interesting, another headline that has come out of a statement from Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, the DPIIT Secretary R.K. Singh, who's also shared that deep tech startup policies, in fact, in the final stages of interministerial consultation, essentially hinting at the fact that there could be a policy in the deep tech space very soon, which will be governing how AI and AI-related startups operate in India. That is also interesting, come to think of it. The government has been trying to rein in AI for a while. They want to innovate, but at the same time not or rather ensure no misuse of AI or deep tech. It is a problem that the government is dealing with at the moment, and it looks like there is a policy that may be rolled out very soon.
Right, and the policy is essentially to make sure there's enough funding available for deep tech. They're looking at deep tech startups as the ones that will help startups in India create IPRs or intellectual property rights. So it's not enough to just innovate and be a cool new startup with innovative ideas. You eventually have to own up those ideas and then file for intellectual property rights that this intellectual property belongs to you. More and more Indian startups need to keep owning more and more intellectual property rights. And what will enable that? That will be all these deep tech startups and the research and development that goes into deep tech startups. And deep tech, by that, we're talking about startups that are dealing with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, with space technology. So all of these are what will sort of unlock the key, unlock the ability of Indian startups to be able to develop and own intellectual property rights. So that's why they're seeing this as an important cog in the entire startup ecosystem in the country. And even in fact, you had Niti Aayog CEO Ms. Amitabh Kant talk about the fact that we will need a fund of funds, alternative investment funds, a separate window being opened to fund deep tech startups and research and development into creating deep tech startups. So all eyes are on this space going forward. Now that you have somebody from the government making it very clear that there'll be a separate policy, because there's already a startup policy. And the fact that they're going to have a separate policy for deep tech startups also means that there's going to be funding separately allocated for deep tech startups.
Absolutely, and a proper policy framework for that matter for deep tech startups in particular. In fact, you alluded to Amitabh Kant speaking at that event. Let's quickly listen in to what he said.
In the last 8 years, as has been said, we've been able to create the third largest startup ecosystem with over 112,000 startups. 112,000, from 300 to 112,000 startups. That's been the jump in 8 years. We've from about 4 to 5 incubators to over 400 plus incubators, to over about 115 plus unicorns, with a combined valuation of over $350 billion. That's been the startup story of the last 8 years. So we've had almost about a 20x increase in total funding. We've had almost a 12x increase in the number of investors. We've had almost about a 8x increase in the number of incubators since then. And to my mind, this is a remarkable story, and startups have actually created close to over 1 million plus jobs, but they've created over 10 million indirect jobs, and they've contributed to a gig economy of over about 4 million individuals. That has been the remarkable story. So it's a story of growth with a lot of job creation.